This series is going to be about how the U.S. government, along with large agribusiness conglomerates, similar to the oil companies, control the modern food industry. The first mass-marketed GMO was milk containing a bovine growth hormone, known as RBGH. This was a genetic manipulation patented by Monsanto. The FDA declared the genetically modified milk safe for human consumption before critical information on how the GMO might affect human health was available. The RBGH hormone constituted a huge temptation for struggling dairy farmers. Monsanto claimed if injected regularly with RBGH, which is sold under the trade name Posilic, cows would typically produce up to 30% more milk. For the struggling farmer, a 30% jump in output per cow was irresistible. Monsanto stated that farmers should leave how cows can be untreated. It was called crack for cows because of its stimulating effect on milk output. Monsanto knew RBGH hormone not only stimulated the cow to produce more milk in the process, it stimulated the production of another hormone, IGFI, which regulated the cow's metabolism, in effect, stimulating the cell division within the animal. This is where problems begin to appear. Scientists spoke out that RBGH increased the levels of incel, like growth factors, and had a positive link to cancer. The cancer, according to scientists, might not appear until years after hormone exposure. Not surprisingly, hormones that got cows to pump 30% more milk had other effects. Farmers began to report their cow burnt out by as much as 2 years earlier, and that many cows had serious hoof or udder infections as a byproduct of the RBGH hormone treatment. In some cases, the cows couldn't walk. In turn, the cows had to be injected with more antibiotics to treat those effects. The FDA responded by using data provided with Monsanto. The government encouraged engineering of nature and GMO long before the effects were known, as early on as during the Reagan administration, under the guise of deregulation and free markets. The revolving door where corporations hire former government officials, or vice versa, in order to promote their private interest is well known. Monsanto donated huge sums in campaign contributions to both Republicans and Democrats. During the controversy of the labeling of Monsanto's RBGY milk, the 12 members of the Dairy Subcommittee of the House Agricultural Committee had taken in large campaign contributions from Monsanto. They had won a total of $711,000 in Monsanto campaign finance. Not surprisingly, the committee killed the proposed labeling law. Monsanto had a special skill in placing its members in key government posts. George Bush's agricultural secretary, Ann Vinman, came to Washington in 2001 from a job as director of Cow Gene Biotech Company, which became a Monsanto's subsidiary. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had been CEO of Monsanto's subsidiary GD Searo, the producer of artificial sweetener. He had also been chairman of California biotech company Gilead Science. Former U.S. Trade Representative and lawyer to Bill Clinton, Mickey Kanner, left government to take a seat on the board of Monsanto's. Monsanto's also had on its board William D. Rockethouse, former head of the EPA under President Nixon and Reagan's administration. Michael A. Friedman, Senior Vice President of Clinical Affairs for Monsanto's Pharmaceutical Division, G.D. Sorrell, was once acting director of the FDA. Marisa Hell, Monsanto's director of UK affairs, was once an assistant to President Clinton for intergovernmental affairs. Linda J. Fisher, Monsanto's vice president of public affairs, was once administrator of EPA's Office of Prevention, Pesticides, and Toxic Substances. Monsanto's legal advisor, Jack Watson, was chief of White House staff in the Carter administration. So basically, both administrations had this revolving door. This is emblematic of how industries work. They donate, they regulate those industries, and then they get out of those industries, and then they profit off the deregulation or regulation that benefits them, or vice versa. They lobby, campaign, and then they get into the government. But that's kind of how the system works with both parties in many areas. This pattern of revolving door conflicts between officials of government agencies responsible for food policy and their corporate sponsors, such as Monsanto, Dow, DuPont, and the other agribusinesses and biotech players, had been in place at least since the time of the Reagan administration. The U.S. government is the catalyst of worldwide GMO agricultural industry. So that was part one, a little background. Now you can use this in any area. Look at who is in the administrations. Look at what industries they're from, what industries they worked for after. This happened in the Bill Clinton administration. You had people like Larry Summers, and Henry Paulson, who were the Treasury secretaries. They worked in his Treasury Department. They left after getting rid of Glass-Steagall, deregulating the banks, and then they created Citigroup, which was a group that received billions of dollars through the banker bailouts by the very deregulation that they created. So part two, we'll get into food and how it affects foreign policy. This is a multi-part series that we will dissect.